Hello and welcome to the Microbiome Medics podcast. I'm Dr. Siobhan McCormack.
And I'm Dr. Sheena Fraser, and we're your co-hosts.
We are both GPs and lifestyle medics with a shared passion for microbiome science, and we have spent the last 5 years deep diving into the world of the gut microbiome.
We've been analysing the evidence, appraising the studies, speaking to the experts, and writing the Gut Microbiome for Clinicians e-learning course for the BSLM Learning Academy.
We have discovered that the gut and other human microbiomes are pivotal to every aspect of your health and physiology, and the pillars of lifestyle medicine hold the key.
So in these Microbiome Medic podcasts, we'll be covering the basics, bringing you the latest research and talking to the experts on all matters microbiome.
We'll be translating the evidence and packaging it into actionable, bite-sized chunks so that you could harness the power of the microbiome to improve your own health and that of your patients. Hello and a very warm welcome to the Microbiome Medics Christmas podcast. I'm Siobhan and I'm here with my co-host Sheena, who's going to give you a flavour of what to expect in this episode.
Welcome. This is a very special festive Microbiome Medics podcast today, and I'm feeling quite festive actually because it started snowing here this morning, which is amazing. It doesn't snow that often in Glasgow, so I was quite pleased about that. So today we're going to be considering the impact of the festive period on our gut microbiome, and we even have a Christmas research paper to discuss, which will interestingly be looking at the impact of meeting your in-laws on the gut microbiome, which sounds like something we all should know about. So today we're going to start with food and the festive period. So Shiv, do you want to kick off?
I will get started. Thanks, Sheena. So I'm going to be a bit of a Grinch here. I'm here as the voice of your gut microbiota. I want to ensure your gut microbes aren't left off the Christmas list this year because, well, look, why is Christmas dinner and Christmas food an issue for the gut microbiota? So I would say you could summarize this in 3 words: the quality, the quantity, and the timing. So if we start with the quality of food, so you have this sustained period. It's not just Christmas Day. You have this kind of 2 to 3 week time with, unhealthy eating, and it affects your gut microbiome. You've got these trillions of microbes, bacteria, archaea, and other organisms, plus their genomes, plus the surrounding habitat that make up this thing we call the gut microbiome. And your microbes are relying on you to serve up a varied plant-based diet so that they can use that for energy to function. So it's important that we remember that our gut microbiome is not sort of passive passengers. These microbes are active participants in every aspect of our health, really. And the other important thing to remember is diet really rapidly alters your gut microbiome composition. So the composition is all the different microbes that are in your gut. And we really like them to be rich and the healthy ones to be in abundance. And we like a big diversity. That's a really, health promoting gut microbiome. So an unfavorable composition or an imbalance called dysbiosis, it's associated with numerous non-communicable diseases. So just to name a few: diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, neuropsychiatric disorders. So it's really important that we have and maintain a good composition in our gut of these microbes. So when, even after a day or even a couple of days of poor eating and poor dietary choices, it really upsets the composition. So then we move on to sort of the further with the quality of the food, really. The Western diet is the problem. So when we talk about this thing called the Western diet, we're really talking about ultra-processed food. We're high in fats, high in sugar. So really, Christmas is full of this stuff. So we're talking mince pies, cakes, puddings, turkey sandwiches, fizzy pop, tins of Quality Street in hospitals and GP surgeries as well. We always get given tins of sweets. Processed meat, so there's pigs in blankets. I'm sorry, guys, but, your gut microbiota do not like pigs in blankets. So all these foods are low in fibre, low plant food, and your gut microbiome, they need, or the microbes there, they need fibre. So we're meant to get about a minimum of 30 grams a day. And I think in the UK, it's something off the top of my head, like 18 grams a day. So it's really, much lower than it should be. So why do we need fibre? We need fibre because the microbes through process of fermentation. They make incredible things from this fibre, particularly this group of chemicals that you will hear us talk about all the time called short-chain fatty acids. Now, these are incredibly important, beneficial chemicals that maintain the motility of your gut and keep the gut barrier in really good health, and help you produce mucus. And butyrate, one of these short-chain fatty acids, is a major source of energy for the colonocytes and and very important for the barrier function. So moving on to food quantity. So I looked at some stats. In the UK, around Christmas, the average person consumes 7,000 calories on Christmas Day alone. So that's basically, 3 times the recommended. And Sheena, wait for it, most of us apparently have 2,000 calories before the Christmas meal. So,
Whoa.
So there is a weight increase around Christmas, okay? So there's a rapid weight increase in a very few days, 1 to 2 weeks. So apparently, according to someone who's actually looked at all this, there's a maximum weight gain. It actually peaks around day 10 of Christmas. And then it falls a bit by the 3rd of January, but actually half of the weight that you gain remains, that you still have it in the summer and beyond. So it's not huge amounts, but it's small cumulative gains every year. And that's why we have this lifetime weight gain issue. So that's food quality, food quantity. I am sounding such a Grinch, okay? I'm nearly there. One other thing is timing, food timing. So your gut microbiome, the microbes there, they love resting, okay? They like a period without food, and they do lots of incredible things during these food-free periods. But we love non-stop snacking over Christmas. We don't have any breaks. We start as soon as we get up, and we're kind of having turkey sandwiches after a huge meal, 11 o'clock. So we need to think about this overnight fast. It has to be at least 12 hours to even start fat burning. And, it's just often it's very, very disruptive. So I have been a complete misery, I realise. I think that's all the points. But I am here on behalf of these microbes, and they wanted me to pass this information on. So kind of, that's where I'm coming from. What about you, Sheena?
When do you have your Christmas dinner? Because we vary it. Some years we have Christmas dinner at lunchtime, and sometimes we have it in the evening. But I have noticed that if I have meals in the evening now, it disrupts my sleep, and I really struggle to get a good night's sleep or a good quality sleep after eating quite late at night. So I'm sure, as you say, your gut microbiome is not functioning nearly as well as if you are you're eating late into the night. So it's not ideal, is it?
No, I agree.
Great. Okay. So another couple of thoughts. I'm probably not going to be quite as doom and gloom as Siobhan. I want to think about the really real positives around the Christmas period, the sort of foods that we eat that are actually pretty good for us. So, for example, Brussels sprouts. Fantastic in terms of their fiber intake, their fiber composition. They will stimulate the growth of lots of beneficial bacteria in your gut. There's lots of polyphenols and things in these lovely green vegetables, and you get lots of important vitamins and minerals from them as well. So they're pretty good for us. And we use fruits quite readily at Christmas, so we eat a lot more satsumas and oranges, cranberries, which are very high in fiber and very high in polyphenols, again stimulate the growth of very beneficial bacteria in the gut. So they can be brilliant for you as well. And things like nuts. Christmas is a great time of the year for consuming nuts, and we all consume a bit more nuts than normal around the Christmas period. And again, they're packed with fiber, protein, essential fats, and they're high in polyphenols as well. And in fact, if you eat nuts whole, they will stimulate the growth of very, very beneficial microorganisms in your gut. So again, enhancing our short-chain fatty acid production, which are short-chain fatty acids are very beneficial metabolites, which have a whole host of really, really important functions for us, from immune functions to vitamin and hormone production, to enhancing our sugar and lipid metabolism. So there's a whole host of things that they're really, really important for. And all these foods that I've mentioned really help to stimulate short chain fatty acid production. So that's fantastic. And the other the other one food group that I want to mention around the Christmas period are spices. Because we use a lot of spice on the run up to Christmas, with things like cloves and cinnamon and ginger. These are packed full of polyphenols, which are these really, really amazing antioxidant properties that actually do stimulate the growth of lots of beneficial microorganisms in our gut, but they also help us fight cancers and things as well. So they're amazing, and they help to regulate our appetite a little bit as well, which is good. And we put spices in foods and in our drinks. So things like mulled wine, for example, is packed full of lovely spices. And mulled wine is generally made with red wine. So it is, full of polyphenols from the grapes as well, which again are fantastic for us. So long as you don't have too much of it, it can be quite beneficial for you. So there's lots of positives in the food world around the Christmas period, I think. What do you reckon, Siobhan? Anything else you can think of in the food front?
I think it's sort of interesting. I think the sort of, the cultural climate has changed so that now families are quite used to having, younger people or university students coming back who are vegan or plant-based. It's kind of something we've all had to get used to, really. So the idea of the nut roast, very sustainable meat-free option for families if they're trying to cater for all visitors. So those are, with nuts or sometimes lentils and whole grains as well. And again, hugely rich in polyphenols, natural micronutrients. And as you said, they've got brilliant antioxidant, anti-inflammatory properties. And really with your nut roast and then the table sort of laden with carrots and Brussels sprouts and the parsnips and loads of different veg. I mean, that makes it a very I think my microbes would be very, very happy with that. So there is a way that you can, keep everyone happy. So all your visitors and your gut microbiome as well. One other thing is this resistant starch thing is quite interesting. So there's this, when you get starchy foods like potatoes or rice, and you cool them and then recook them, it alters the molecular property of the food and makes it more resistant to being digested in the upper gastrointestinal tract. And that means that it goes lower down to the colon, and there it can be used as prebiotic food by your gut microbiota. So that's quite interesting. It's also got a lower GI index as well. So it's quite interesting, this different composition of food that when you cool it, reheat it. So that's
so we should probably make. Is that saying that we should probably make our potatoes the day before, or allow them to cool?
Yes,
and
then there is that.
Reheat them.
well, I think so. I think there's quite. It's not huge in the news. I think it's probably because no one's making any money from it, are they? But I mean, it's certainly in university departments who've got specialised in this area, they're sort of. I think it's something like reducing the GI index by about 30%. I mean, really substantial. Rice as well. And I think there was another thing, maybe we'll speak about it in another episode when I've actually looked it up properly. But it certainly means that, rice salads, potato salads, using your leftovers is a really, smart idea. And again, sustainability, and it's got to be a frugal Christmas. There's lots of pressure on people in terms of finances, and all these plant foods are cheaper. And there's nothing wrong with packs of frozen veg, perfectly good, very cheap, very affordable for everyone. Rather than families feeling they have to buy this incredibly expensive spread. I just think keep it simple, keep it cheap, keep it sustainable. It's just kind of, better for everyone all round. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Good messaging. So we've covered quite a lot of the sort of food aspect. We're purposefully not going to go too much into alcohol, I think, in this episode, because we all know that most people overindulge a little bit in the Christmas period. Suffice to say, the alcoholic drinks that are the most beneficial are, in fact, red wine for your gut, that is. Actually, interestingly, gin does stimulate a little bit of gut microbiome, so that can be quite good for you as well, but only in small quantities. Obviously, the more you drink, the more harm it will do, because the alcohol will kill off quite a lot of bacteria down there. So So ideally, don't drink too much around the festive period, but I'm not going to nag you any more than that. So let's move on to other aspects of the festive period. So what about stress? I mean, most of us get a bit stressed on the run up to Christmas. I have to say, Siobhan, the last few weeks I have found a bit stressful, just trying to fit in all the Christmas shopping and the organisation and the parties and the, everything that's going on around the Christmas period. There's so much happening. It's definitely taken its toll on me. Can you tell us a little bit more about what stress does to our gut microbiome?
Yeah, it is a strange time. It's a strange time as a GP as well, because you can feel patient stress. It seems like sometimes it's stress because you've got too much on. Sometimes it's stressful because you don't have enough on and you're feeling, isolated or lonely. It's also hugely financially. There's lots of pressure on parents and some concerns about job security and finances. It's also a sort of a line in the sand in terms of a date in the year where people feel, I haven't had my operation done, I didn't get my appointment, this hasn't been sorted out. So people feel stressed for a whole load of reasons. And certainly I do feel patients talk to me about it a lot. Quite often I don't, I ask them a little bit. Quite a few people just say, I'm quite stressed about it. And there's family arguments or discord or financial concerns. It can bring up a lot of things for people. So what's this got to do with the gut microbiome? Well, it's incredible the effect that stress has on your gut and also the effect that your gut microbiome has on stress. So if we look at the way that the microbes in your gut, how could they alter stress? So social stress, we know, negatively impacts the composition of your gut microbiota. So it reduces health-promoting bacteria. So you'll hear Sheena and I talking about these two a lot. It reduces bifidobacteria and lactobacillus. And that altered composition has impacts on your health. So it seems that when you have a different composition of collection of microbes in your gut, it affects how you perceive stress. So when I first sort of started looking into this, it seemed very sort of esoterical. How could your gut affect stress and what could be the connection? So how do they know this? Why do scientists think this? Well, we'll be talking about this a lot in future episodes, but the studies show, for example, in lab mice, they have models where they stress lab mice. And when they do that and they measure the gut microbiome, they look and analyze the microbes in the gut microbiome, the microbes change. Now, so they have these lab mice, they stress them, and the composition of their gut microbes alters. If they then take those microbes and transplant them into normal mice that aren't stressed, those normal mice start acting in a stressed and depressed way as well. So these behaviors are transferable through FMTs, these fecal microbial transplants. So it's kind of really interesting, the connection there. And they think it works through the gut-brain axis, which again we'll talk about, which is all these different pathways, these sort of highways of communication between the gut and the brain and other organs. So things like the vagus nerve, for example, things like your immune system, when it releases cytokines, that chats to your brain, and things like endocrine system, when you release hormones from your gut. So these all affect the way that you perceive stress. But this works both ways because stress can alter your gut microbiota as well. So when you are stressed, your body responds with this stress response, releasing chemicals, particularly something called cortisol. And cortisol seems to have a direct relationship to, it reduces diversity, reduces healthful bacteria, and it's very negative to the gut barrier, and it increases the permeability of the gut, and it has all sorts of problems, causes all sorts of problems with chronic low-grade inflammation, which we know is involved with lots of chronic diseases. So it's really interesting, the connections, and Christmas is a stressful time. So eating healthily will be a way that you can improve your resilience to these sort of stresses. So I think we'll move on to sleep. Should we do sleep, Sheena?
Yeah, let's talk about sleep. I think it's probably one of the most important pillars of lifestyle medicine, sleep, but also has quite a big impact on the gut microbiome. So if we sleep really well, then we allow our gut microbiota to flourish, because essentially the really beneficial microorganisms sort of get to work at night, producing all these wonderful short chain fatty acids that I mentioned before. So if we want to really encourage these guys to produce lots for us and do really well, then we want to have a really nice long sleep. So sadly, on the run up to Christmas, it's the party season, and I was out last night. My God, I didn't get to bed until after midnight, and I feel dreadful today because of not getting enough sleep, even though I was driving and I didn't actually drink any alcohol last night. So just purely a lack of sleep can really upset your body, and we just it has a terrible effect on your gut microbiome. So I'm a bit worried about mine today. I'm going to have to sort of do what I can to enhance it over the course of the next few days, just to make up for that. So yeah, there's a few different mechanisms about why that happens. And when you look at things like circadian rhythms, everything in our body is governed by circadian rhythms. So it's almost like all the organisms, all the cells in our body, they kind of need this lovely rhythm every day to know what they're doing. And it kind of allows them all to work really harmoniously together. So all these organisms, they kind of work together and synchronize their behavior via the sort of circadian rhythm pathway. And in that, so there's some bacteria that work really well at night, others that work better during the day, and so they'll have their sort of really industrious periods, and then their less industrious periods, and that will vary between species. So when we're sleep deprived, we actually reduce the diversity and the richness of species in our gut, and as such, we increase the more harmful bacteria that we have, and they tend to thrive during the day when we're eating and things. So again, when as we've mentioned before, when you eat a lot during the day over the Christmas period, you sort of encourage all these really harmful organisms to sort of flourish, and they keep going during the day, and so you're sort of suppressing all the really beneficial bacteria if you're not getting enough sleep, and so that has an impact on the metabolic capacity of our gut microbiome and that short chain fatty acid production. And one of the really important things that our gut microbiome produces is serotonin, and serotonin is one of the precursors for melatonin, and melatonin is a hormone that's essential for sleep. So people that are very low in melatonin have trouble getting off to sleep and maintaining sleep. So if you don't have a good melatonin production in your body, it certainly could impact on your ability to sleep. So that's another reason why it's very, very important. So if you are having some late nights and things, then be wary that you don't overdo it. We want to try and maintain a nice steady circadian rhythm. The occasional late night is not going to harm you too much, but obviously if you have an awful lot of them, then that's going to impact. And certainly when it comes to Christmas Day, I know my kids will be up at 5 a.m. I try to stop this from happening. It does my head in, but that's what generally happens. And if we can prevent that from happening, then all the better, because it will affect their behavior throughout the day as well. It's a bit of a problem. But yeah, it goes for kids and adults, around Christmas. Kids are so excited, they go to bed later, and they're then waking up earlier in the morning for exciting things to happen, like seeing elves, seeing what they've been up to, and various things like this. And so just be mindful of sleep and how important it is for us, and try to optimize your sleep if you can. So that's all I'm going to say on sleep. We are just going to discuss a couple of other little bits and bobs that are important around the Christmas period. Siobhan, what about activity and time outside?
Yeah, well, I think it's really connects, just hearing you talk there. What I love about this subject, and what I know that we both love about lifestyle medicine, is the connection, the way it's this network of activities that all connect together. So sleep, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about outside activity or time outside in nature and being physically active, everything connects. You've got to get outdoors, particularly first thing in the morning, so you get that sun on your face and your retina, so it kickstarts your 24-hour cycle. It's really good for you being out in nature because you're in contact with lots of different microbes, and that's thought to be really important and is a detrimental of built environment, which lots of people now live, where there's very few plants and greenery. Actually, they get very depleted urban environments, and people who live there are depleted in lots of microbes. We are replenishing all the time when we're out and about in nature. And that's very important to remember. Also, you're just out, you're active. So this idea, getting the family out after lunch or after a late breakfast, even a quick trot around down to the park and back is really, really important. So people are very sedentary at Christmas, and the average adult, again, more stats, apparently the average people watch 5 to 6 hours of TV a day, and that's not including other screen time. So, you can see that once people get in their seats, it's nice and warm, you don't want to stand up. But it's really important. They found that even if you stand up every 20 minutes, it alters your, the way you respond to glucose. So, it's really important. So we'll be doing a whole section on that, Sheena. So I think we've got to move on. So let's move on to minimizing harmful substances.
Yeah, and to be honest, Shiv, I think we've mentioned alcohol and various things there, and we know that processed foods are really harmful for us. We've mentioned a little bit about excessive eating of processed foods and things. So ideally, keep that to a minimum if you can. I think what we should do next is move on to connections and discuss the research paper that we've got. So Siobhan, you were gonna talk about this one. Do you want to tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, well, it's Christmas, it's silly season, isn't it? So I was looking up papers that we could use, and I came across this one. It's called The Effect of Having Christmas Dinner with In-Laws on Gut Microbiota Composition. It just made me giggle, really, because I just love the idea. It was done by this Department of Vascular Medicine at this academic centre, sort of well-known academic centre in Amsterdam. I just loved the idea of these people sitting around, these scientists thinking, what are you doing for Christmas? Oh, I'm going to the in-laws, or that'll be stressful, or probably it will ruin my gut microbiome composition. And then sort of saying, why don't we do a study on it? And I just thought, it's just made me laugh to think that someone was actually going to do a study to compare what happened when you went to see the in-laws with what happened if you didn't. So just as a bit of background, apparently there are in-law studies which have highlighted the impact of social interaction with the in-law family on physical and mental health. So there's a couple of references which I'll put down. Women living together with their in-laws are up to 3 times more likely to develop coronary heart disease, and increased in contact with the in-laws during the holiday season. It can affect physical and mental health. I think it's a bit unfair because there's lots of people who've got lovely in-laws, and I'm sure there's lots of people who've got, the idea of seeing their parents or their mums will kind of cause more stress than seeing the in-laws. But anyway, that was the premise behind this. So they was thinking, okay, so we've got these studies that show that there's an association between in-laws and increased stress around festivity times, but no one knows why. Why would this be? So they said, well, maybe it's got something to do with gut health and your, gut microbiome. So they aimed to determine whether gut health could be implicated in mediating this in-law induced, stress response. So they did an observational study, and they tried to find some people. So they got 28 healthy Caucasian participants, 14 men, 14 women. Apparently a few sort of dropped out, and they ended up with 24. 16 were visiting in-laws during Christmas, and 8 were staying with their own family or visiting family. And what they did was they asked them to produce fecal samples. Can you imagine the conversation at the dinner table? That was very nice. I'm just going to pop to the loo now to provide a sample for this research project. So they had December the 23rd, December the 27th, they collected fecal samples. Apparently that was the time when 2 people dropped out because they thought it was disgusting. They didn't want to provide samples. Apparently there's this scientific thing they call the yuck factor, which is a feeling of horror or disgust towards anything involving poo. So there's a paper about it, which again, if anyone's interested, I'll put in at the end. So those who could bear the idea of providing samples, the scientists did 16S ribosomal DNA sequencing on these samples. We won't go into that now, but Sheena and I will be discussing that in later podcasts. And they did find, so you've got to remember that when you do this analysis, you end up with these massive amounts of data. So this is kind of big data really pumped up, and they sort of, because there's trillions of microbes in the gut. And, if you've got sort of 24 people and you're trying to analyze all the sequences, it gets very, very complex. So they put these things into very clever machines, used statistical models, and they found that there was a microbial signature that could discriminate. They could see that there was a difference between those participants who'd been with the in-laws and those who'd stayed with their own family. It was a very loose association, but there was a significant reduction in ruminococcus. Now, don't worry too much about the name, but it's generally thought to be a beneficial bacteria, and low levels are associated with negative things like chronic stress and depression, and high levels are associated with better mental health. So, there was that observation. So the people who were with the in-laws were a bit more stressed, and there was a modest change. So it was just an association. It's a bit silly, but the conclusion was quite fun. They said, before we can recognise in-laws as an environmental factor that can be negative to your health, we need to do a larger RCT. So there we go.
There we go. So it does look like it's a little bit harmful to us to spend too much time with the in-laws if you have that relationship with them. But I guess we're all a bit more comfortable with our own families having grown up with them than the in-laws, perhaps. But
do you know what, Sheena? I think it probably tells us more about how silly studies can get. And as fun as it was, how complex it is. It's all associations, and it's something we'll be talking about in further podcasts, that we've really got to be very, very scientific and very sort of, really look at the evidence in detail to see exactly what people are saying. But it's a bit of fun, and it brings up a few points.
Interesting. Right. Thanks for that. So we're going to move on now to our question answer. We've got one question today that was posed by Andrew from BSLM. So he was asking what we can do if we have damaged our gut microbiome over the Christmas period. What can we do to rehabilitate it afterwards? So how can we detox our gut microbiome? So I think what we're going to do is maybe just give a couple of suggestions each on how we can improve upon this. So Shiv, do you want to kick off?
I think Andrew's sort of saying that he's not going to follow any of our suggestions, and he just wants to know what to do when he's completely done the opposite of what we're suggesting and eaten and drunk to oblivion. So I'll be very quick. I would say, Andrew, if you're out there, or anyone else in his situation, if you have overdone it on Christmas, I would say give your gut a break. This time restricted eating, have at least 12 hours at night, if not more than that, 16, 18 hours without anything, just water. Number 2, you get cabin fever, get outside, get going. And number 3, polyphenols and tea. Make your gut microbes like you again. Be nice to them.
Yeah, good plan. Okay, what am I going to suggest? Well, I would recommend, if you've got leftover turkey, why don't you turn it into a curry and basically ramp up the spices in your diet a little bit, and that will really enhance your gut microbiome. Again, if you're turning it into a curry, add a load of veg to that curry and try and increase your veg intake over the period after Christmas. And fruits as well, obviously. The more plants you can eat, the better. And don't discard all those nuts that are sitting around after Christmas. Have some. And if you eat nuts before a meal, you're actually going to reduce your appetite and reduce your calorie intake at the mealtime as well. So I would probably go with that. What else? Well, I mean, I guess just... as Siobhan says, you want to make sure you're resting, you want to make sure you're sleeping well enough, and she wants you to get outside and enhance your microbiome. So I think that's a really, really good idea. I would probably avoid too much alcohol in the New Year period, because that again can be really killing for our gut microbiota. So maybe detox a little bit from the alcohol over that time, and that might help as well to enhance your gut microbiome. So I think that sort of brings us to the end of our festive microbiome podcast. So I think we should really just summarize a couple of important things that we've kind of talked about here. Siobhan, do you want to sort of summarize what we sort of the bring home messages from our podcast today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take 2 or 3. So don't forget veganuary. Veganuary?
Is it veganuary?
Yeah.
I've not heard of that.
Have you not? Apparently it's a really big thing now. In January, going vegan.
Oh, right.
Vegetarian.
I don't think well, I might do it.
Yeah. Oh, I read somewhere that it was very, very popular now. So there you go. So I would say my top tips for intelligent indulgence over Christmas, because your gut microbes, they deserve the best too, your microbes. So I would say take advantage of fibre-rich foods on the dinner table. We've already said there's loads of plant foods. So just, load up your plate with those, because these prebiotic foods, they boost your gut microbes and they produce brilliant chemicals. I would say go bold and switch to a nut roast. If you don't want to do that, you can go small and just have little food swaps, like swap sweets for raw nuts, and just have loads of fruit, fresh fruit salad. And just lastly to say, all 6 pillars impact your gut microbiota. So, all of them, going outside, sleeping well, everything matters to your gut microbes. Sheena, what about you?
Quite right. Maybe I would add the spices. Think about what you can put spices into, and herbs for that matter, because herbs are packed full of polyphenols too. So spice and herb everything up if you can, and including your wine if you're going to have your wine. Go for the mulled wine. And if you can, get outside for a walk on Christmas Day. That's a great way of enhancing your gut microbiome, especially if you have access to an area which is out in nature, the parks, the countryside. These areas really enhance our gut microbiome much more than city walks. And in addition, just optimize your sleep over the festive period. Your sleep really, really matters, so make sure you're getting enough of it. Shiv, what's coming up in future podcasts?
Yeah, we're going to wrap up now, but just to say there's going to be loads of great things. We'd love to hear your suggestions for anything you'd like us to talk about. We'll be talking in future podcasts about fermented foods, probiotics, leaky gut, and the gut-brain axis. So we'd love to hear from you. And what about you, Sheena?
Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. It was really interesting for me to learn a little bit more about what happens to our gut microbiome over the festive period. So I'm certainly going to be a bit more mindful of what I'm doing to my gut microbiome. So if you did enjoy this, and if you do want to learn a little bit more about the gut microbiome, remember that we have written a course, Gut Microbiome for Clinicians, which is an in-depth learning experience on the gut microbiome. It's available via bslm.org.uk, so take a wee look there. And if you've got any comments or questions for us, then please send them in to BSLM. Next time, I think we're going to be discussing an introduction to the gut microbiome, so sort of going back to the beginning a little bit, and we'll hopefully be bringing that to you in January. So I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and festive period, and please look after your gut microbiome, and we will see you in the new year.